Good morning, good evening to everyone who has joined this webinar with us. My name is Arun. Thank you for taking time to join us on this interesting webinar. We are here to speak on the topic sustainable space economy, the needed philosophy and next steps. It is a great pleasure for us at BIS Research to have with us today Mr. Timo Mustanen, who's the founder of Sustainable Space Economy. At BIS Research, we have been associated with him for quite some time now, and we recognize him as an enlightened industry expert, and he has been solving problems for many space industry participants. And we have had multiple interactions with him within the satellite manufacturing domain, specifically related to propulsion capabilities. And we have now grown to realize that he is much more than that, and he has been pursuing his passion to help the space industry establish sustainable practices from the get-go, and he has been pushing and he has been a voice for this sustainability to be implemented across the space industry. And so it gives us great pleasure to introduce him here as well. And thanks, Timo, for taking time to join us in this webinar. Before we get into the webinar, here's a brief introduction. But along with us is joined our principal analyst of aerospace and defense, Nilopal Oja, and he has been leading the aerospace and defense research projects at BIS Research, and a lot of outputs that he has spearheaded has put BIS Research on the map for us. So thanks, Nilopal, for joining us on this webinar.
Thank you.
Before we get into the discussion, here's a brief agenda of what we would be covering. We would begin with a brief overview of the top trends that we at BIS Research have been observing, across different domains, what's happening, what is the current state of the space industry, and then we would delve a bit deeper into the satellite manufacturing, launch services, and the different trends with respect to key segments of the space industry before we point out some industry-wide challenges and opportunities that we at BI Research believe exists, and we have been observing across multiple research studies that we have been publishing. And then we would hand it over to Mr. Timo Mustanen, who will then take over and explain his views about sustainability with respect to the space industry and how the space industry can move forward implementing this concept in many different ways. And then we would have a round of concluding remarks on the key insights that we have covered. And then we will open up the floor for questions. But in the meantime, if you have any questions to share, feel free to put that in the chat and we will have a look at it. And we'll pick up those questions when we enter the Q&A segment. So this would be our agenda for the discussion. Now, to begin with, we at BIS Research have what we call as the satellite launch forecast. It is one of the many databases that we have built, and we continuously update it as we observe and and track the markets that we continuously cover within our research studies. And so the top three numbers that you see have been changing significantly, yeah, if you compare what we shared in our previous webinars. So the last webinar we did, the total number of satellites to be launched between the 10-year timeline was a little over 45,000. Now the same number has gone above 47,000. And even this, from our perspective, is a very, very conservative estimate. The optimistic estimates have many more thousands of satellites added to the mix. And the Earth observation domain alone has close to 8,000 satellites to be launched within this 10-year period. The rest of them, largely dominated by communication constellation satellites. And the number of constellation operators is well over 150. And that market is getting fragmented as we speak, as many more startups, interestingly, some startups who do not have space expertise as their core IP, they have also entered the space industry as new space startups, thanks to the commercialization of space technologies, and the possibility of achieving a space solution at a relatively cheaper price, that even smaller companies with relatively smaller budgets can aspire of a space asset to develop new solutions for new customers across verticals. And be it earth observation or connectivity, the bigger drive for the new space market as such has been to develop solutions for new use cases catering to new customer groups, specifically those who are aware of space capabilities but they did not have access to the sufficient funds, as most of the other geo-based systems and their related solutions have been high priced, and they were technically unaffordable to them. But over the past decade we have seen newer solutions heavily relying on small satellite technologies coming up, which have really brought in the idea of the same solutions or comparable solutions at relatively cheaper prices that these new customer groups can also afford to procure, and their business operations have been continuously enhanced with these new products and services. And the growth of the IoT domain as such is another big driver for the satellite based connectivity solutions, specifically focused on remote connectivity, where those locations units, be it mobile units or fixed units which are outside the scope of our existing fiber optic network, can still be integrated into the larger IoT architectures through satellite based IoT services. And these are just some of the top level views of what the new space industry has already achieved. Now there is much more territory to be covered for the new space industry, and as new customers are entering the market, with the initial phase of growth for the new space markets being the push side, where the operators and the new space participants have taken these new solutions to the customers. Now the customers are coming back to them demanding much more improved versions of the same. So the market is continuously moving from the push to the pull form, and the new space market is steadily growing, and that is the big driver behind this 45,000 satellite count going over to 47,000 and maintaining a continuous trend of growth. And and specifically within these evolving trends, there are some key areas that we need to focus on, as the evolution has its own aspects. Now for that I would like to invite my colleague Nilopal to come in and share his views on the satellite manufacturing side of things. Over to you, Nilopal.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Arun, for laying the ground for our discussion on this webinar. And as you rightly said, the sustainable space economy is something which has been in talks for quite a long time now. And one of the major points that we know about the sustainable space economy is starting with the space infrastructure. So it is one of the growing industry as of now. It has seen double-digit growth in the past, and it is going to see that in future as well. So it involved different aspect of the new space ecosystem. So like in last 10 years or so, before 10 years, there was not much talk about the small satellite constellation. People were looking after the bigger satellites who were having more potential, like which were located in the geo orbits. Now, as in the last 10 years, the space infrastructure has grown tremendously, and companies such as SpaceX, OneWeb, Amazon, they are all working towards creating those satellite constellations. So, as Arun, you rightly mentioned, the number of satellites that we are seeing now, they are standing at 45,000 plus. And this companies which are creating those satellite constellation are looking at different aspects of it as well. Either it is for earth observation or for communication. So all those companies are focusing and providing those services to the end user. Apart from it, the and now in last 5 years and in coming years as well, there has been need for facilitating those satellite constellation in space, and it has created an economy of its own. So apart from this, there are companies who are providing space support services for expansion of those infrastructure as well. So companies such as Orbit Fab, Momentus, Orbit Recycling, they are looking to have said to they are looking to provide those services. Either it is refueling, space tugs, all those additional propulsion which is required for any inactive satellites to gain more return on investment from their current asset in space. So those companies are facilitating those areas as well. So having said that, the earlier space market was predominantly dominated by government. However, in the recent past, this trend has changed, and this has moved from the government to the private entities. Now, the government agencies are joining forces with the private organization to provide those services in space and improve the overall space infrastructure. So now, talking about one of the major questions that new space ecosystem has is the longevity of the lower Earth orbit satellites. All those constellations which are looking at the weight category of 10 to 600 kg, mostly what happens, most of those satellites operator are looking for the cheapest possible platform to create those satellite constellation. Now, in those cases, what companies do is they compromise on the quality of the payload. In some cases, they use the commercial off the shelf electronic components, and those satellites that are there in space are having a life of close to 3 to 7 years. So they are looking to use those quartz component, compromise on the structural integration, because the actual life of those satellite is not that long. But once those satellite, now what happens with those companies is sometimes their asset goes into the space, but after being operational for 2 3 months 6 months, it goes out of like a small error in the chips or processor, compromises on the overall mission. So now more and more satellites companies are coming up with more creative options for providing those longevity for the satellites. And satellite manufacturers are also looking into the serial manufacturing of those satellite components. So now, earlier we used to see serial manufacturing for the automotive industry, but as the demand we see, we are talking about 45,000 satellites, which is still a very conservative number, I would say. So to facilitate all those production capacity, the companies are looking into the serial manufacturing of those components as well. So now, while the satellite and subsystem level of the satellite manufacturing domain are absorbing that emergence of serial production format, they are also expecting a similar ramp up for the production volume of at the component level as well. So now all those satellites which are very smaller in size, they require special designed electronic components as well for all those operators. Now it becomes a series of satellites, and even if a single satellite is not working, it might disrupt their constellation. So now with those satellite operator contemplating new version of their space assets and deciding how to integrate new capabilities, the need for the enhanced version of new component subsystem are basically on rise. And so the serial production of this new systems, subsystems for the satellite are resulting in the demand of relevant specialized components. So when I talk about the specialized component moving from the satellite, moving to the actual launch in vehicle industry. So the current space launch market serves three broader category. One is the small satellite, small lift launch vehicle, medium, and heavy. So all these three categories are the vehicles that clients are using for their assets to be launched in space. So now the new players in SLVs, now I believe there are 40 companies who are actually manufacturing and providing those launch services. So now with the rapid advancements in the development of those production facilities, it has helped to lower down the cost to the customer considerably. So now the technologies such as reusability of launch vehicles, ride sharing for those launch vehicles as well. You can book your own slot to launch your satellite on a shared basis. So all those activities, all those things are helping the overall space industry. Now, this lower cost is helping the industry to launch more satellite in space. However, the use of other means of launching the satellite is also coming up. So the use of rocket motor and partially reusable platforms still do have some high cost associated with them. But this is a key opportunity for the development of the alternative propulsion technologies for launching those satellites. So the platforms which are single stage to orbit, the hypersonic, supersonic launch systems, the companies such as reaction engines, hypersonic launch systems, Radian Aerospace, they are also looking into this lower Earth orbit launch market, because now this considerable progress in their propulsion, developing alternative air breathing platform that are poised to enter this niche market, the competitiveness in the launch service market will increase. Now, most of these technologies that we are talking about currently might not be ready to use at this moment, but as we have seen how rapidly the industry can change, as far as for the space division, I know that it is a very volatile market. There are services that are coming in, there are technologies which are enabling those high demand for those satellites. So now the launch system is offering to the existing LEO service clients. The hypersonic technology can be also used. The single stage to orbit kind of technology will be in use. And with the adoption of those advanced propulsion technologies such as scramjet, rocket assisted propulsion, even the nuclear propulsion, which is, I believe, NASA is testing with some of the private players for their deep space missions. So all those designs, all those platforms will provide more capable infrastructure for those satellites to be there in orbit. Now, the concept wherein the hypersonic aircrafts will be used for launching the satellite, it will be more from the point of it. They are taking the blueprint from the actual commercial aviation industry, wherein it will be more like you are booking ticket for yourself. Now, in this case, you will be booking a ticket for your satellite to be there in orbit, and all these platforms are capable or have demonstrated are capable to uh, transport your I would say cargo to the satellite, to any additional requirement that you have can be delivered in space. So now, as we mentioned about the overall Leo constellation, now based on the kind of key challenge that this will impact upon the launch system is the availability of different infrastructure on ground as well. So when we talk about the hyperplanes that will take off horizontally and will provide those services in orbit, they require specific spaceports. Now with limited LEO-based service provider, the debris management, all those different use cases needs to be checked in. And the key challenge that impacted the success upon the launch includes the availability of spaceports, as I have mentioned earlier, the payload capacity, the operational cost, and the repairs of those airframes and the avionics required for those platforms for safely putting those assets in orbit is much essential now. They are looking to provide those services as well. And post that, the multiple launch developers are evolving their launch vehicle targeting the small satellite market. Now, this entire new space revolves around the space infrastructure, as well as once they start looking into the 10 to 600 kg weight category. So now many of them are aspiring to support or achieve multiple launches a year, ranging from every month to every week. Now, this indicates the launch vehicle manufacturer also are adopting serial production format. Now, this adds the risk similar to the serial production for satellite, as I mentioned, like commercial off the shelf components. They are not that much reliable, but as a system failure at the satellite level can be tolerated and or replaced without much damage to the entire system. But a failure in launch vehicle level will result in the loss of the entire mission. So establishing a reliability in the sustainable manner within the launch vehicle manufacturing and is very crucial for the success of the entire space industry. So that would be it from my end. Over to you, Arun.
So thanks, Nilopal. Agree with you. There are so many things happening. 150 plus satellite operators, 140 plus launch vehicles, both under development and in operation, thousands of satellites to be launched. Along with it has come there are many concerns which are growing, with the space congestion and the concerns around that growing, going it to the upstream orbital segment. There are operators who are concerned their own payloads floating around could hurt their subsequent payloads that they might be launching. Debris from one launch impacting the missions of some other operator, because space is a shared entity. And one mistake from one operators and could not only harm their mission, but it could also have cascading impact on so many other missions. But long story short, it's multiple operators, multiple launch vehicles, so many activities happening. And so when it comes to the idea of sustainability, I think we need to have two separate focuses. We would let Timo get into the specifics of it, but just to set the stage for that, the space industry has evolved into the serial production format. So large volume production capability is now being installed. Some of them are already in operation, and with manufacturing capability that can give an output in large quantities, the risks of failure is also growing along with it. So many mistakes can happen that can remain undetected, and then that could result in loss as well. And the serial production is something the space industry is just getting used to, and it's more of a necessity at this point than being a nice to have solution. So there are some in orbit anomalies that could happen, that could impact the missions. So operators have to be wary about it. Now they can logistically think about it, saying, I might go with cheaper hardware because it's cheaper to manufacture smaller satellites. Even if one goes out, I might launch a replacement. That logic works out to the point where they have their space real estate within their control. 3 4 satellites, and all of them are lying around, and they go for a sixth satellite just because the previous 5 satellites have failed, means they have already put, with the six satellites, six different pieces just sharing that space, and then that's just adding up to the orbital debris as such. So clearly in our previous webinars we did come across this, and we discussed how the need for deorbiting services is growing, but how many satellites can actually acquire and utilize that sort of service? Because going into orbit and getting in touch, physically in touch with the satellite in orbit, which is non-cooperative, defunct, is much more risk. So one small mistake and it could have a further cascading effect. And then finally, looking at it from a cost standpoint, for a new space startup, a small company, a young organization, who, yes, clearly they have developed a unique technology, innovation at its best, no doubt about it, but then they are operating on limited financial resources. They have a small customer base, and they have very narrow margins for failure, and they have to continue success. So when establishing reliability of technology and securing relevant customers who will continue to pay for their service, when these are being the top priorities for a small business, a new space startup, would they have the bandwidth to think about sustainability? What is sustainability to them? How can they implement sustainability? And does it make financial sense to actually consider sustainability as a means to growth? We need to have answers to these questions, and with this we would like to hand it over to Mr. Timo Mustonen, who can take us through his views on sustainability in space industry. Over to you, Timo.
So hey, thank you, Peace Research. Thank you for this great opportunity to be here. Thank you for the great words before and sharing the information. So my name is Timo Mustonen. I am founder of Sustainable Space Economy, and my greatest passion is to execute towards sustainable space economy. I have 18 and 13 years old daughters, and I want to make sure that their future will be brighter as it looks at the moment. I'm working also as CFO at Aura Propulsion Technologies. Aura is developing water-based thrusters and plasma brake for deorbiting the small satellites. Aura has recently got a 2.4 million funding package from European Union to further develop its plasma brake. So next slide, please. So as it was already earlier stated, we have huge potential with space, and we have also challenges because of that. So global space industry is forecasted to make revenue more than 1 trillion by 2040. It's a huge business opportunity. It's a great challenge as well. In the past, there were 2 or 3 superpowers working together in, I would call it all space, but now there are about 90 nations operating in space. That also is showing what type of challenges we have, because there will be much more operators there. Amount of startup companies in new space is growing a lot, and even huge amount of investors are involved, and most of the money comes from private sector at the moment. While space industry is growing, it's providing growth opportunities for other space and other cross-sectoral innovations. It's making more value and renewal and growth in space and non-space sectors. And not to forget that space is playing key role in transformation to climate neutral economy to achieve those targets in Paris Agreement and United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we could collaborate, we could execute proactively to make space economy sustainable, but there are challenges. We could correct and avoid the mistakes we have done earlier on Earth by messing up things, but we need to learn new ways of doing things. So next slide, please. So how I see the issues with sustainability at the moment. So stakeholders in the space ecosystem, they are working in their own silos. There are countries, there are territories, there are different type of companies, there are space lawyers, so many stakeholders, but there's no place and way how to get those to work together, since we all know that space has no boundaries, and we should have holistic joint vision. And also, like it was stated already, this major transformation is happening from old space to new space. So there's this big transformation taking place. One issue I find is that there's a missing value-based leadership. Companies are looking at the numbers that, hey, how can we make more revenue in next quarter? But of course, it's also true that when talking about startup companies, especially, those revenue margins are very small. So it has limitations of what type of things they can be doing. But that cannot be finally the excuse that we forget sustainability. I can see that there's a huge amount of talk and talk and talk. For example, when I launched Sustainable Space Economy in Paris Space Week last year in March, there were so many persons coming to me and say, hey, Timo, bollocks, we are already doing so many things with sustainability. And I simply asked one simple question. Do you have company-wide strategy, what you're going to do with sustainability? And people got quiet. They were doing activities there and there, but it wasn't company focus in most of the companies. One issue still with the sustainability is that we have poor track record in the past. So we have messed up things already on Earth. So how to learn new ways of working and thinking things with passion and feeling in your heart that you want to make a better future for the future generations. Next slide, please. So all this led to the thing that I wanted to establish a sustainable space economy. Next slide, please. So we have very simple vision. We want to improve quality of life on Earth equally for everybody. It doesn't matter if you live in India, China, US, Finland, wherever. Everybody's quality of life should be improved. We can utilize space in sustainable way. For example, to avoid space debris, hazard chemicals, and so on. And last but not least, a third part of the vision, that we are not allowed to compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I hope that all of you can agree with this vision. Next slide, please. So how we are working to make changes happening? We have global focus, and since space has no boundaries, we focus on the whole ecosystem, upstream, downstream, and other space-related activities. So we discuss with the space lawyers, satellite builders, launcher companies, insurance companies, just name it. So we are in the same boat. We need to make things happening together. Next slide, please. We want to show leadership. We show global value-based leadership as an execution-focused, non-political, independent, and private for-profit company. People might be asking that, hey, why you want to make profit when you're talking about sustainability? So I believe that as a for-profit company, we need to earn our credibility every day, and to be able to show that execution is happening and companies are executing towards sustainable space economy together with us. And we want to see ourselves as orchestra leaders. So we want to be maybe behind the curtains and making the other stakeholders in the space ecosystem globally working together and getting the snowball rolling, and also change the way how people think about how we are doing things. And if you ask from the people under 30 years old, for example, they say that the sustainability is already in their DNA. So no reason to talk about that. But then the challenge is that those people are not making decisions. So we need to make sure that those people who make the decisions have clear vision and they show leadership. Next slide, please. How we want to help companies, organizations, and consortiums globally. We want to solve their challenges and help them to execute towards sustainable space economy. So many companies are saying that, hey, we cannot do this because we don't know how to create a strategy. We are missing legal information. We don't have knowledge about IT solutions. We don't have the funding to do this. We don't have the right persons to run those projects, or we don't know how to set up the right type of network. And together with our partners, we will give the full package and all the options to help those companies, organizations, and consortiums globally to start execution towards sustainable space economy. And like I said, we want to be orchestra leaders. We want to solve the challenges. Next slide, please. Thank you for time listening to me today. Please visit sustainablespaceeconomy.com. I want to be in touch with you. I want to interact, and I want to learn how we can work together. And like our slogan is saying, impact through collaboration. We are in the same boat. We can make even miracles happening together if we have great passion and we feel things the right way in our hearts. That's the place where everything starts. Thank you.
Thanks, Timo. Thanks for the insights. Now, before we get into the Q&A session, one summing up of all the key points that we went through in this presentation. It's a steadily growing market. There is so much happening across manufacturing, launch services, and even downstream. And there are so many challenges that the companies are facing, be it in space or in ground. And there seems to be a connect between all these problems, and sustainability seems to be the way forward for a solution that solves all the problems in such a way that the companies continue to grow moving forward. And we do believe the impact of efforts of stakeholders such as Mr. Timo Mustonen and organizations such as Sustainable Space Economy will be a contributing factor to that. But overall, for the space industry, the demand is growing, the supply is also steadily catching up with the demand. It's not there yet, so there is so much that needs to happen before all these systems become fully active and start delivering the services. But on the way towards all these success, the growth, the consequences are more debris in orbit. A new format of manufacturing, adding up more layers, more layers of risks for failures. And as the cost of manufacturing, at least at the satellite level, coming down, the inclination towards COTS deployment also growing, and owing to cheaper manufacturing cost, operators resorting to mere replacement of failed satellites with in-orbit spares. That is just adding up to these concerns surrounding in-orbit debris or space congestion, and that is just one part of the story. There is signal interference and so many other issues which impacts the sustainability of the space missions as such. And as we move forward, as many more thousands of satellites are launched, for example, a year back, the total number of satellites launched in that year itself was a little over 1,740. But this year, when we updated our satellite launch forecast, what we realized is one company, SpaceX, alone has launched much more than what the entire industry launched the previous year. And this is just going to grow. There are so many new companies, the constellations are growing. Some constellations are approaching the middle point of their installation phase. Some are towards the second half of it. And then comes the replacement phase and the expansion phases. Some companies have already announced that we are talking many more thousands of satellites. So this is only going to grow. Now, there are regulatory frameworks which are still evolving. Some of them are trying to put stringent timelines on how the constellations could be installed and so on, and that is already throwing in spanners in the process for all the operators, because they now have to ramp up their production, get their launch contracts in place, and secure the slots for all of their satellites. For one, if they miss that timeline from their first launch, then their entire system is going to be reduced in number compared to what they aspired for. The other aspect, if they delay too much after starting their initial installation phase, then they will forever be in a loop of replacing their satellites, never being able to realize the larger system. And the only way at that point is to launch a lot of satellites in a shorter span of time, which comes with along with its own marginal cost, overhead cost, which the companies have to bear with. And not all the operators have such access to funds. And so, the policies are still coming up, but the practices at this point are not necessarily in one flow with any unified approach, as Mr. Timo Mustonen had said. So everyone is trying to go behind the numbers, ignoring the consequential impacts of their activities. And so the idea of sustainability itself at this point is shaky, and the definition of sustainability varies greatly from organization to organization. For a new space startup, sustainability would mean something, but for an established organization, it would be something else. And each of the business would have a certain input already going on with respect to sustainability, but is that making sense to them? Is that actually contributing to at least their own operational sustainability? And if it is doing so, is it also going in and contributing positively to the sustainability of the overall industry? This is a big wait and watch. It will take some time, but we cannot be waiting forever. And that's where we believe we need the support of stakeholders such as Mr. Timo Mustonen and organizations such as Sustainable Space Economy who can guide this thought process, these discussions both inside and outside of space organizations. So, the more we start talking about sustainability, the sooner we will reach a stage where we all have a common understanding of what sustainability is, be it on the ground at the manufacturing side or the mission operations side or in orbit. And we will also have a clear understanding of what needs to be done moving forward and what we should stop doing, to ensure the sustainability that we install remains there and does not get dismantled by our own subsequent activities. And so these are all a big wait and watch, and we believe efforts of individuals such as Mr. Timo Mustonen and organizations such as Sustainable Space Economy will be required to carry forward this torch, largely enabling discussions around sustainability. We need to speak more about sustainability and see where we land on in terms of definitions. But before we go into the Q&A round, I would like to invite my colleague Nilopal to add something to the concluding remarks. Nilopal, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Arun. Thank you, Timo. So, as you rightly mentioned about the key takeaways from the entire presentation, wherein the sustainable space economy is the next step in the evolution of the new space start for new space domain. And as we also see that. As you mentioned earlier, wherein the satellites which are defunct or are there in space, they are occupying some of the viable slots in space. So all those, when we see that space has no boundaries, but when we look it from the satellite positioning perspective, the slots which are there in orbit are very limited. And to have those being acquired by satellites which do not have are not functional in space doesn't make sense. Like if there is an asset which is non-operational, it should either be deorbit. As I believe government agencies are also looking into such options where there needs to be a additional small propulsion that will move the defunct or out of service satellites and deorbit by their own system. So now looking into those application areas where those deorbiting, those services are being taken into consideration, the sustainable space economy is making more sense now. So while the growth of the satellite and launch vehicle industry and the entire space infrastructure is growing, the concern related to it is also growing. So debris and all the other satellites, and I believe 25% of the assets which are there in space has the capability to be operational, but they are just sitting there. So that is not giving a right amount of return on investment as well from the company's perspective. So all those satellites, all those assets which are there in space should be utilized to the maximum, because as I mentioned earlier as well, and I will repeat myself, wherein space might be boundless, but the available slots for operating the satellites, they are fairly limited. So that would be my concluding remark. Arun, just yes. So when we talk about the topics that we cover at BIS Research, so we do take into consideration, like we deal with all the reports that are creating that disruption, the technologies which are creating which are providing solution, which are guiding companies to make quick and reliable decisions as well, whether it is in terms of their investments, their production plans, their any roadmap for the future. So here you can see on screen as well the topics that we have covered, recently published. Space situational awareness is one, in orbit refueling, another technology which is supporting the space infrastructure, PNT technology, satellite electric propulsion in the smaller satellites looking to use electric propulsion as their main propulsion, which creates that sustainable economy. So apart from it, the radiation hardened components for space applications, the commercial off the shelf components, evolving deep space technologies, a satellite docking system, orbital testing, fuel management system, uh, global and medium heavy lift launch vehicles. So all those topics that we have recently published, and we are also looking into the topics related to the communication, GNSS corrections, space force assessments as well. And apart from it, some of the reports that are under production are the satellite-based IoT services, space-based edge computing, global space carbon fiber composite market as well. So all those reports, we do work around the sustainable space economy from that perspective as well. Over to you, Arun.
Thanks, Lopal. And at this point, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to our platform called Insight Monk. It's an AI-based platform. Essentially, it's a curated research platform where industry experts can come in and they can, use the platform to search for insights or very specific material. It's a filtered out. The system filters out very relevant information for you so that you don't have to sift through the noise that you otherwise get through conventional search engines. And you can use this platform as well to network with fellow industry experts. We have industry experts from many markets verticals joining us, and we are also participants on the platform. You can throw in a question about any technology and market, and it will be visible to everyone on the platform, including us. If we have an insight about it, or if we have a report that we believe answers that question, we would definitely respond to your question there. And at the same time, the industry experts can also share their knowledge with you. And this registering is absolutely free, and you can interact with industry experts across verticals, and you could also be interacting with us on the same platform. And besides presenting that curated search for you, all of our publications will also be accessible, and you will see that the platform allows you to get insights depending upon, if you want to see something directly from a stakeholder, you can raise a question and it gets answered. But if you want to see published material relevant to that, that will also be given in a separate segment. And if you are going to interact with us by subscribing to our content, whatever subscription that you have will also be accessible there. So all in one place. We believe this platform will be of great help to you, and it's already serving the needs of many of our clients. And we see this platform increasingly being utilized by our clients, both existing and future. So I would like to invite you to take some time, do check us out there. And if you have any initial questions, if the registration is free, please register and we will reach out to you. So we will help you to familiarize with this platform. And any questions anytime you can throw into this platform, and we can carry the conversation there. And now we can open the floor to questions. So thank you for patiently listening to us. Now if you have any questions, please put that in the chat and we will pick up those questions.
Yes. So we have our first question, and I believe Timo, you would be the right person to answer this. So what are the key in ingredients in the sustainability when it comes to the spacecraft manufacturing?
So yes, a good question. I would like to approach this first from recycling perspective. I don't know if the others feel the same way, and then you can continue with your answers. But I would think that even if we don't have this recycling opportunity in space yet, so whatever we are manufacturing, we should be thinking longer time frame ahead and thinking that what the future technologies can allow, and how we could make things easier in manufacturing and in concepting phase already. So this recycling part is important to me because of sustainability, but I know it's not the answer to the whole question, so I will move it to business research as well.
Yes. Yes. So basically, when we talk about the key ingredients, when it comes to the spacecraft manufacturing, the reusability, as you mentioned, Timo, is crucial. Apart from it, the overall structure wherein the ride sharing and the capabilities where they are using certain propulsion technologies for more sustainable approach towards the entire from the point of cost as well as from the point of operation is quite essential. And looking at the current scenarios wherein the alternate technologies are also coming up for delivering those satellites in space, such as hyperplanes, hypersonic aircrafts. It is creating a very niche market as of now. So there are players coming up with those more technologies to facilitate those services. So we also have one question coming from Kai. Who pays for deorbiting defunct satellites and fractured debris particles? So Timo, your thoughts on that?
Okay, so what I'm furious about is that customers are not interested in sustainability. Customers should be carrying that as well. It should be happening even if there's no law existing. Even your heart should be saying, hey, this should be done. Seems that we need laws to make it happen, but I feel that customer should be paying because customer is getting the benefit as well.
Yes. Yes, so I believe all those views wherein people do talk about the ownership for those assets in space. So it do lies with there are government organizations who are cataloging all those debris in space and are coming up with those stringent regulations where they are looking to make people accountable for their own assets in space. So that again, it's a debate in itself, like who does have that ownership. So apart from it, we have another question wherein should space startup really focus on sustainability as their primary focus, and will be for securing funds and customers alike, and how is this sustainability connected to the success, especially for the startups?
May I start answering that?
Yes, yes, Timo.
So I'll give you an example. So, and not because I'm working with other propulsion technologies, but it's a good example. So when you start thinking about your startup company, and when you make those decisions in the early phase that, hey, how close sustainability is your heart? So I would say that developing water-based thrusters is not more expensive compared to developing any other thrusters. So it's pretty easy to make in the first phase good decisions. And I understand that if you have made certain maybe wrong decisions in the beginning, it's much more expensive to make corrections. But in the early phase, please start thinking about that is it sustainable or not. And even if your customer or even if your investor is not saying right now that, hey, why you are not sustainable or why you are, please think in that way that in long term, based on every study, companies which are focusing on sustainability are more profitable.
Yes, yes, definitely. And when we talk about these startups, they do tend to experiment a lot with the technology and coming up with more viable solution. So just to give you an example, there are various service providers who are facilitating the space infrastructure, and there are companies such as Orbit 8, Orbit Fab, who are providing refueling technologies as well. So in last 3 years ago, when we started looking into the space infrastructure domain as a whole, as a topic, there was no mention of companies who are looking to provide those services in space. But as of now, there are lots of opportunities that has been created, and there are companies who are willing to pay to reactivate their satellite in space. So as you see, like if you are coming up with a viable solution, people are there to pay you. So I believe for all these startups, we do see that going forward. As long as your product is sustainable and it is providing value addition to the existing infrastructure, people will surely be paying for that.
And I want to continue with my answer is that although I mentioned our propulsion technologies and talking about components for the spacecrafts, but let's not forget the applications that how to improve quality of life on Earth, how to improve capabilities for farming, for example. That's one part of sustainability as well.
Yes, yes, definitely. Yes. Arun, do you want to add something?
Sure, Nilopal. I think that question that we had just a moment back on who's going to pay for deorbiting of existing debris, defunct satellites, at least the operators can be held accountable. But debris at this point, detecting the debris is more possible. But then clearly identifying and tagging those debris as whose debris is that, which spacecraft did it come from, unless and until it's identified soon after a in-orbit collision incident, it's really hard to conclusively prove who owns whatever pieces of debris. So installing that sort of accountability retrospectively looking backwards, I don't think that's going to be viable. But with space situational awareness services growing up, at least half of those commercial service providers are in the early growth phase, and they are going to become bigger organizations. They are going to provide multiple space situational awareness services. That's going to enable the industry get a more data driven hold of what's happening in orbit. So moving forward, all the activities in space, and be it regular or abnormal activity, it would be more easier and more feasible to identify who caused what problem, and who is supposed to own it. But then until the regulations kick in, that accountability cannot be put into practice. But at least those organizations who by design, as Mr. Timo Mustonen said, who install this idea of sustainability within their DNA, and and those organizations are going to operate with a greater sense of responsibility. At least they will use those emerging or evolving space situational awareness capabilities to ensure their missions are not causing the damage moving forward. And this is more of a honor system at this point. But to be frank, sustainability in orbit is going to be a honor system for many more years to come. It needs to be a collaborative effort where everyone is chipping in. And at some point, we are going to reach a stage where operators cannot do anything that they want and then just go scot free. They are going to be tagged, they are going to be identified. But will they be subject to any legal proceedings? Now that is a wait and watch, because those policy frameworks are yet to arrive. They are evolving. But moving away from that legal mandatory consequences, companies can very well install this in their DNA and evolve into much more responsible actors in space. Because in the end, it's not just someone else's safety that they are paying for, it is their own safety as well. So looking into the long term, I think if the operators and all the space industry participants, if they chip in one way or the other, as much as possible from their own end, I think sustainability in space is very much within our grasp, and it is going to be a matter of time. That would be my view.
And if I may add here something, one thing is important. You ask questions like when you discuss with your investor, you simply ask, hey, what do you think about sustainability? How important value it is? And even if the investors say, hey, you will get 1 million, but if they don't care at all about sustainability, is that really the right investor for you? And if you have a customer, why don't you openly ask from your customer that, hey, what is your thinking about sustainability? So if you recognize the importance of sustainability, please be our customer. If you don't care about it, maybe we don't want to have that type of customers. I know it's very black and white, but asking questions, making things happening, and execution is important.
Yes, very true, Timo. And I believe there needs to be questions coming on from different sectors as well, wherein if the customer should also ask what kind of models are you using, are those sustainable model, and same goes with the end users as well. For any application, how viable your solution is, like how will you be using it. So that becomes a give and take kind of a scenario where everybody needs to chip in and ask those questions.
Yeah, and what I have known that there are very many companies saying that sustainability is very important,
Yes.
and those are currently non-space companies. But when they get to the space and they have space strategy, so they will start asking, for example, how green is the data which I buy from you? And then you need to
Yes.
be able to tell that, hey, well, actually, it's not that green. And then somebody say,
Mhm.
but our data is green and it's the same price. So
Yes.
who will get the deal? That's the
Yes.
question.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. Definitely, Tim. So over to you, Arun. Some concluding remarks from your end as well.
Sure. Thanks, Nilopal. I think we are done with the questions at this point. Now, should any of you have any further questions, feel free to put that in the chat. We will ensure we get the answers to those questions, and we'll be sharing it across our social media handles as well. And that will be published along with this webinar when this goes online. The recorded format. By that time, the answers to all the other questions would also come in. And should you be interested in such conversations, we would like to take this opportunity to invite all the industry participants who are watching this program. We would love to have you with us on similar discussions. So if you have a very specific topic about space that you are passionate about, that you want to take the message to the industry, we are very much available. We are waiting to hear from you. Do let us know. We will arrange a webinar. And apart from it, we are always available for many different chats. There is a deep tech podcast that we do, that me, Nilopal, and some of our other colleagues, we huddle up, and then we have many interesting discussions that also gets published. So if you're looking for a conversation around what the industry is up to and where the industry is headed, and what you specifically as an organization have to offer to the space industry, we are all ears, and we would love to speak with you. Do let us know. Reach out to us through our social media channels. You can use this chat forum as well. And feel free to send us that message. We will get back to you, and we'll set up those discussions as per your convenience. But thanks again to Mr. Timo Mustonen and sustainable space economy. This is a topic that everyone is increasingly concerned about, but not many are being vocal about it, largely because this idea of sustainability is not being tagged along with any dollar value at this point. And it's not necessarily a great place to be, but the situation is improving. We have organization. We now know sustainable space economy is here to help space industry participants install or implement sustainability within their operations, be it at the ground level or at the mission level. If you want to integrate sustainability within the DNA of your organization, irrespective of your size, we know at least Mr. Timo Mustonen and Sustainable Space Economy, they are there. And similar efforts are going to come, and we will be on the lookout for similar efforts. And it needs to be a collaborative effort. So let's keep talking about sustainability. And we would like to conclude this webinar at this point. And on behalf of BIS Research, we would like to thank Mr. Timo Mustonen and Sustainable Space Economy for taking their valuable time and joining us in this discussion and answering the questions so patiently. And thanks everyone for taking time to joining our show and watching us with all the patience until now. We hope we delivered some value to your thoughts about sustainability on space. There are many more topics that we are going to come up with the webinars, and we are all ears for your suggestions, comments, and feedback. Thanks again. Thanks for your time. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you, Timo. Thank you, everyone.
And I want to find more soulmates. So if you find me on LinkedIn, let's network there.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Thanks,
Sure.
everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.